Welcome to Birmingham, Alabama. And this is the Sloss Furnaces. For nearly 100 years, this was the industrial heart of the American South, where iron ore was transformed into the steel that built the skyscrapers of New York. But the price of this progress was the lives of hundreds of workers who perished here. They were burned, crushed, overcome by gas, or fell into molten metal. All of these events have turned Sloss Furnaces into one of the most haunted workplaces in America. The history of Sloss Furnaces begins in 1881 when Colonel James Withers Sloss founded it. Birmingham was booming, then known as the Magic City thanks to the steel industry. But for the workers, mostly African Americans and poor immigrants, this wasn't magic, it was hell. They had to work 12 hours a day in temperatures reaching 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Visibility was low, toxic fumes filled the air, and danger lurked in every corner. But the true nightmare began in the early 1900s with the arrival of a graveyard shift foreman named James Wormwood. Everyone called him Slag. Slag was a monster. He was in charge of the night shift, or the graveyard shift, with about 150 workers. To impress his superiors and increase production, Slag forced his men to work to the point of exhaustion. He allowed no breaks, no holidays, and forced them to perform incredibly dangerous tasks without safety gear. Under Slag's brutal reign, 47 workers lost their lives on his watch, 10 times more than any other shift in the history of the furnace. Countless others were blinded, lost limbs, or were permanently disabled by explosions and accidents. But Slag's cruelty eventually demanded a price. In October 1906, on a normal night shift, Slag was standing at the top of the highest blast furnace known as Big Alice. Suddenly, he lost his balance and fell straight down into the pool of molten iron ore below. His body was consumed instantly. The official report stated he got dizzy from methane gas and fell. But everyone knew the truth. Slag had never climbed to the top of a furnace in all his years there. Many believed that the workers, unable to endure the torture any longer, threw him into the fire together to end the nightmare. The graveyard shift was cancelled shortly after due to too many strange accidents and a drop in productivity. But Slag, he never really left. Even after his passing, Slag's spirit continued to terrorize Sloss Furnaces. In 1926, a night watchman was severely injured after being pushed from behind by an invisible force. As he fell, he heard a deep, angry voice scream in his ear, "Get back to work." In 1947, 3 supervisors vanished during their shift. Later, they were found unconscious, locked in a small boiler room in the southeast part of the plant. When they woke up, all 3 told the same terrifying story. They had been approached by a man with severely burned skin looking truly horrific. The man had shouted at them, "Push some steel," before they lost consciousness. But the most frightening attack occurred in 1971, right before the plant closed for good. Samuel Blumenthal, the last night watchman, was making his final rounds. When he reached the top of the stairs near a furnace, he encountered an entity he described as half man, half demon. This monster tried to push him up the stairs. When Blumenthal resisted, it began to beat him savagely with its fists. He managed to escape, but when he was examined by Dr. Jack Barlow, his body was covered in severe burns shaped like fists exactly where he had been struck. Blumenthal passed away not long after, never daring to return to Sloss. Although Slag is the most famous monster, he isn't the only spirit here. Sloss Furnaces is also the home of Theophilus Calvin Jowers. A very different ghost story. Jowers was an iron founder at another furnace in the system, the Alice Furnace, in the late 19th century. He was a man who loved his trade and took pride in his work. But in 1887, while trying to fix a jammed bell at the top of the furnace, he lost his balance and fell into the molten iron. His passing was as horrific as Slag's, but his spirit is different. It is said that Jowers continues to work. After the Alice furnace was demolished, his spirit moved to Sloss Furnaces. Workers often see his figure walking the catwalks inspecting the machinery. Sometimes they hear a voice warning them, "Watch the heat," or "Hurry up." Unlike Slag, Jowers seems to want to help to ensure everything runs smoothly. Even his son later reported seeing his father's ghost while driving nearby. Beyond these two main characters, Sloss is filled with unexplained phenomena. There was a young pregnant woman desperate from abandonment who threw herself into the furnace in the early 20th century. Since then, people often see a white deer appear on the grounds during anniversaries believed to be her reincarnated spirit. In the blower building, workers frequently saw heavy tools moving on their own. Dark shadows would glide across the high walkways. Birmingham police have received over 100 reports of paranormal activity here. From steam whistles blowing by themselves and footsteps to actual physical assaults. Notably, the majority of these incidents happen in September and October, right during the Halloween season and also the time of Slag's death. Paranormal film crews like Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters have all come here, and they were not disappointed. Zach Bagans and his team were physically attacked, pushed, and scratched. Another investigator had a cut spontaneously appear on his hand and start bleeding right in front of the camera lens. Today, Sloss Furnaces is a National Historic Landmark, a unique industrial museum. It hosts metal art classes, concerts, and an annual Halloween festival. But when night falls and the stage lights go out, Sloss returns to being the domain of Slag and the departed workers. Thank you for listening to the story of Sloss Furnaces. What do you think about Slag and the workers? Are they imprisoned by the very work that ended their lives? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell because there are many more houses waiting for us to explore.